What's going on, guys? I am the Wrestling King coming at you with the 2019 WWE Pay-Per-View DVD Collection. So there's 14 pay-per-views during this year. So I'm just going to go ahead and start right in with the Royal Rumble 2019. As you can see, you have Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch on the cover. And then your swarm of superstars down at the bottom. So, very common to have a ton of superstars on the cover of the Rumble, but I like that. Point of the Rumble, ton of superstars in the ring, so I dig it. Spine, you got Styles and Daniel, and then you got Sasha and Rousey. And this was a 2-disc set. This was an alright Rumble. It wasn't bad. I think at some points it felt a little long. I don't know, some of the pacing seemed off with it. You had Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles for the WWE title. I think they had a couple matches during Daniel Bryan's run here. And you had Becky Lynch and Rollins winning both of their respective Rumbles. So that was definitely cool seeing Rollins win. He was very over at this time. And so was Lynch, obviously. And Asuka would beat Becky earlier in the night for the SmackDown Women's title. You had Sasha Banks and Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's title. Brock Lesnar and Finn Balor for the Universal title. Very good match. And Shane McMahon and The Miz defeated The Bar for the SmackDown Tag titles. So yeah, like I said, it was a pretty good show. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think at some points it did feel like it was going a little long. But like I said, overall, it was a good show. Next up, we have the Elimination Chamber 2019. So as you can see, you have your WWE title chamber on the cover. Very cool artwork. You have all 6 participants. You got Kofi, Samoa Joe, Orton, Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan with the Eco title, which was cool at the time. Fit his character. And you have a pretty nice shot of the chamber. Nice blue and red lights. And then on the spine, a lot going on in the spine. You have every women's tag team that's in a chamber match, or in the women's tag chamber match. So yeah, like I said, there was 2 chamber matches, I believe. One was for the women's tag titles. Sasha Banks and Bayley would win, and then you had Daniel Bryan retaining the WWE title, but also furthering the Kofi Mania storyline in the men's Elimination Chamber in the main event. You had Shane McMahon and The Miz. I think they would drop the tag titles here to the Usos. And then Finn Balor fought Bobby Lashley for the Intercontinental title. I think he would win it here. And then drop it again before Mania, I think. There was a bunch of swapping going on. And then you had Ronda Rousey versus Ruby Riott for the Raw Women's title. There you go. You got an Alexa Bliss card with this. And this was only a 1-disc. So, yeah, there's your red disc art with the chamber link. So yeah, pretty fun show leading into WrestleMania. And another pretty good show leading into their biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. You had Fastlane. As you can see, you have all 3 members of the Shield on the cover. This is a 2-disc set, unlike Chamber. You have the Shield on the spine as well. So yeah, this is a pretty good Fastlane. And it was really built around the Shield's final match because Dean Ambrose was not re-signing, so they really were pushing that down our throats. Just last Shield match every time they could. And they even had a network special after this, I think, so this wasn't even the last time of the Shield. But, I don't know. Maybe it was before it, but I think it was a little after. So yeah, a lot of Shield stuff going on around this time. You had Daniel Bryan defend the WWE title against Mustafa Ali and Kevin Owens. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch, and Ronda Rousey would interfere here, and later that would become a triple threat at Mania. Sasha Banks and Bayley would defend the women's tag titles against Nia Jax and Tamina. You had Kofi in a handicap match against The Bar, furthering the Kofi Mania storyline, just not letting Kofi get his opportunity. AJ Styles and Randy Orton. I don't remember what they did here. I think they just got into a brawl. And then you have The Miz flying there. Another tag match against the Usos, Shane McMahon and The Miz. And Shane McMahon would turn on The Miz here, leading up to the WrestleMania match. So yeah, like I said, this was probably one of the best Fastlane pay-per-views they've ever done, if not the best. So yeah, pretty good Fastlane show and good build up to WrestleMania all throughout the beginning of the year. And then speaking of, we have WrestleMania. This would be the last WrestleMania that would go for just one night. At least as of right now. Ever since this, they have been doing 2-night WrestleManias. And yeah, I enjoyed this show, but it was very long. That was the thing. It was so long. I think there's close to 14 matches on the show, maybe 12 or 14. I don't know. There's a lot. And then the pre-show, yeah, very nice logo though. I always loved the red and the gold, New York style logo. This is very cool. You got the Demon Finn Balor down there. Yeah, very cool cover, very cool artwork. I always loved this. And this was a 3-disc. You know, your basic WrestleMania nowadays, you don't get the digipack anymore, but you know, still get DVDs, so I'm happy. Not a ton going on in the back, which was kind of surprising. You know, you have your main event for the women's titles. You have Kofi, who won the title here. Kofi Mania coming full circle. He finally won the WWE title. They have Roman Reigns there, who had recently returned. Or I think he returned before Fastlane after, you know, being re-diagnosed with leukemia. So he had to go away for a bit, and then he returned. And so this is his first one-on-one match, I believe, back. And he fought Drew McIntyre. But I'll go through the match card here. Disc 1, you got Brock Lesnar and Rollins for the Universal title. AJ Styles, Randy Orton, pretty good match. Fatal 4-Way for the SmackDown Tag titles. Usos versus The Bar versus Rusev and Shinsuke versus Ricochet and Aleister Black. You had a Falls Count Anywhere match for The Miz versus Shane McMahon. Fatal 4-Way match for the Women's Tag titles. Bayley and Sasha versus Natalya and Beth versus the Iconics versus Nia and Tamina. And then WWE title match, the new Daniel Bryan, that's when he was going by that name, or just that kind of extra bit, versus Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston, obviously, finally winning the WWE Championship. Awesome moment. U.S. title match, Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio. And for some reason, they put the kickoff Cruiserweight title match, Buddy Murphy versus Tony Nese, on this first disc. They had Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre, kicking off disc 2. The Thugonomics segment with Elias, that was very cool. No holds barred match, Triple H versus Batista. Triple H lost, then he would have to retire, but he obviously beat Batista. They had Kurt Angle's farewell match, Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin. Bobby Lashley versus the Demon Finn Balor for the Intercontinental title. The WrestleMania Dance Break, and the winner take all triple threat match for the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. And there you go, you have your Ronda Rousey trading card. And, you know, you just get the rest of the kickoff show. Revival versus Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder for the Raw Tag titles. The Women's Battle Royal and the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And there's your Raw show. You got this the third disc just had the Raw After Mania. So I'll let you pause and read through that if you want. And, yeah, so I think this was a good Mania. But it, like I said, it just went very, very long. So it just dragged on. Even though the matches were good, it was just too long. I just wanted to go to bed. But yeah, that's WrestleMania for you. Now we're gonna go into Money in the Bank. So on the cover, Money in the Bank, you got Becky with 2 belts at the time. You have her with the Raw and SmackDown Women's titles, and then the Money in the Bank briefcase down there. And this is a 2-disc as well. You know, they were doing a lot of 2-disc sets for just most all pay-per-views at this time. I think they'd stop that towards the end of this year. But you got Brock Lesnar there with the Money in the Bank briefcase and Bayley, who were your 2 winners. Yeah, so Brock came in when Mustafa Ali was at the top of the ladder. He wasn't even in the match, but he won it. But I did like, what was it, Beatbox Brock with the briefcase. Yeah, that was funny. Bayley obviously would cash in on Charlotte to win the SmackDown Women's title. Charlotte would beat Becky earlier in the night. And Lacey Evans would lose to Becky. Becky would defend twice this night. Lose one title, but she kept the other. And Bayley was the new SmackDown Women's Champion at the end of the night. You had Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles for the Universal title, and Kofi Kingston versus Kevin Owens for the WWE title. And I did not get a trading card with this one, but yeah, pretty fun Money in the Bank pay-per-view. You know, looking back, Brock winning, it wasn't that bad. It was alright. And both world title matches delivered, so not too much to complain about. Next pay-per-view of this year was the first Saudi Arabia show of 2019, Super Showdown. So you just kind of have your purple and gold and green artwork, and then all your big stars, you know, Goldberg, Brock, Lashley, Triple H, Undertaker, Reigns, Rollins, you know, all of them. You have Taker and Goldberg, who had the infamous main event here where Goldberg, I believe, got concussed running into the ring post, and then that match just kind of fell apart. Yeah, but yeah, I don't need to say much more about that. You had Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley. Yeah, this was when they were having their big feud. Triple H and Randy Orton had a match here. I forgot Triple H fought here. I almost thought Batista was his last match, but I guess he did have a match here. You had Rollins versus Baron Corbin for the Universal title. That was just terrible feud. I hated that. You had Brock coming in to try to cash in, but he wouldn't succeed. Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE title. They started their feud. It wasn't too bad. And I believe a best tag team battle royal or something like that. I don't know. There's a tag team battle royal. There are your discs. I like the purple. That's very nice. So yeah, just your average Saudi Arabia show. Nothing too great, but, you know, is what it is. It was alright. Then we move on to Stomping Grounds. Now this is an interesting show to look back at, because I remember nobody was buying tickets to this show. They were getting record low pay-per-view numbers, like ticket sales. No one was going to show up to the show. I don't think a lot of people did. But it actually turned out to be not a terrible event. It was just the name. The name is something else. You know, it turns into a boot up there too, so that's something. You got Reigns front and center, and then all your champions in the background. You got Kofi up there stomping you in. Becky too. So yeah. The main event was not the greatest though. You had Rollins and Corbin again for the Universal title. Lacey Evans, special referee. Not the greatest, but otherwise I think the show was okay. You know, you had Reigns and McIntyre in a WrestleMania rematch. Kofi Kingston and Dolph Ziggler for the WWE title in a steel cage. Lacey Evans versus Becky Lynch for Raw Women's title. Bayley versus, I believe, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And at this time, Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan were your SmackDown tag titles. I don't remember who they defended against on this show. I think Heavy Machinery. And you had a nice match between Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens versus The New Day. I remember that. So yeah, definitely some good matches on this show. But yeah, the name would definitely turn you off. But overall, this was actually a better show than people anticipated. So not a bad Stomping Grounds. The one and only Stomping Grounds. Now we go on to Extreme Rules. And this was actually a really good show too. See, I remember pay-per-views in 2019. For the most part, they were all pretty good, but the Raw and SmackDowns really sucked from what I remember. You know, you got Taker and Reigns there, Shane and Drew, all your championship matches here. Even the U.S. title on the cover, that's cool. You got Bayley up top with her title and Braun Strowman down below. So yeah, you had Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley in I think a last man standing match, which was actually pretty good. You had Undertaker and Roman versus Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre, which is a pretty good tag match. You know, Undertaker getting some redemption from the Goldberg match here. You had AJ Styles winning the U.S. title from Ricochet. So they always had good matches at this time. You had the New Day versus Heavy Machinery versus Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan for the SmackDown tag titles. I think the New Day would win them here. Kofi Kingston had a match with Samoa Joe. And then in the main event, you had a mixed tag match for the Raw Women's title and the Universal title. Rollins and Becky versus Corbin and Lacey. And Brock Lesnar would cash in at the end. Brock always wins. I love it. And you even got Paul Heyman screaming in the background, so that's cool. Yeah, so like I said, this is a pretty good pay-per-view. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's a pretty good Extreme Rules show. If that's saying anything. I mean, Extreme Rules has kind of been a dying pay-per-view, but this was actually a pretty good one. Then we move on to what may be the best pay-per-view of the year. I think WrestleMania is up there too. But this was a very good SummerSlam. I believe this one was in Canada. I'm not exactly sure where, but I know it was in Canada. So, yeah. You got 5 people on the cover here. You got Owens, Lesnar, Kofi, Rollins, and Becky. Very cool. And then you have The Fiend on the spine there, Bray Wyatt. This was his debut as The Fiend here. So he had a big entrance and then had like a 3 or 4 minute match with Finn Balor, which, you know, really good start to his character. This new Fiend gimmick. It was pretty good. And I would say the match of the night may have been Charlotte Flair versus Trish Stratus. That was amazing. It was a really good match. You had Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon, which was pretty good as well. Goldberg versus Dolph Ziggler. You know, Goldberg got his redemption from Saudi Arabia, so there you go. Kofi Kingston and Randy Orton had a decent match for the WWE title. You had Becky Lynch versus Natalya in a submission match for the Raw Women's title. And then your main event, which I think was better than WrestleMania, for Rollins and Lesnar for the Universal title. I think this match was better than the WrestleMania match by far. So yeah, this was a really good show, and yeah, not too much to complain about. I know the WWE title match ended in a countout, so that was kind of shitty. But other than that, it was a pretty good SummerSlam. Now, coming off of SummerSlam, you have Clash of Champions, and, you know, rightfully so, you have all your champions on the cover. The beautiful Intercontinental Championship that is now gone. that title, I wish it would come back. But you got Kofi front and center, the WWE Champion. This time, Braun and Rollins were the tag champs, while Rollins was Universal Champ, so that was interesting. Yeah. I don't remember a ton from this show. I don't know that I didn't watch this one live. I remember watching it back. It wasn't the worst, but it was okay. It was okay. Some matches were better than others. You had Kofi and Randy Orton in a rematch for the WWE title. Kofi would retain again. AJ Styles and Cedric Alexander for the U.S. title. I think it was on the kickoff show. You had Bayley versus Charlotte for the women's title. Luke Harper would return here, interfering in Eric Rowan's match with Roman Reigns, because they were doing the whole Daniel Bryan feud with him, but then it ended up being Eric Rowan. I don't know, it was confusing. You had Sasha Banks returning after SummerSlam, and she would face Becky Lynch for the women's title. You had Shinsuke versus The Miz for the Intercontinental title. And then your tag match for the Raw tag titles, Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode versus Rollins and Strowman. And then Rollins would defend against Strowman at the end of the show and beat him. So they lost the tag titles, but Rollins retained the Universal title. And then The Fiend would come in and attack Rollins, starting the infamous Fiend and Rollins feud that we all know and love. And I'm going to get into that right now. Here we go. Hell in a Cell 2019. Definitely an infamous pay-per-view. You know, you got The Fiend front and center here. Bray Wyatt on one side, The Fiend on the other. The Cell dividing them. You got Becky Lynch and Sasha on the spine. So yeah, this was, from what I remember, a pretty thrown together show, like last minute. I mean, you had Chad Gable and King Corbin, who won the King of the Ring, but they didn't have the finals on this pay-per-view, which is kind of weird. You had Charlotte and Bayley again, tag match, I think tornado tag match, Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns versus Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. Hell in a Cell match, Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks, and then the Kabuki Warriors winning the women's tag titles, I think, against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. But the moment you've all been waiting for, Bray Wyatt and Seth Rollins, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. Just, The Fiend lost, or it was a no contest. It was a no contest in Hell in a Cell, which, I mean, it wasn't good, but I don't, think about it. It doesn't give me nightmares, you know? It's just, it was what it was. It was kind of BS, but whatever. The Fiend would win the title at the next pay-per-view, so they could have just gave it to him here, but, Hell in a Cell, not the best pay-per-view of the year, by any means. Now we are in Saudi Arabia again. 2-disc set here. This was a Fremantle release, so only in the UK, but I did get it. You got Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman there. They had a match, just a match. And then actually a surprisingly kind of good match, kind of fun match. You had Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. So, yeah, that was interesting. This was like when SmackDown just went to Fox, and they brought in Cain Velasquez just to have one match with Brock Lesnar, but it was definitely interesting. It was okay. Gallows and Anderson, this was the thing I was thinking of, the tag team turmoil for the best tag team in the world, and they would get released early 2020, I think, so whatever. It is what it is. You had Team Hogan versus Team Flair. There's your winners, Team Hogan. And in the main event, you had Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt. I think Falls Count Anywhere. The Fiend would win the Universal title here. And, yeah, I mean, he won it here. He didn't win it at Hell in a Cell. So they wanted to make things right. Gave him the title, and there you go. Bray Wyatt is your new Universal Champion. And I think not, like, 2 months later, Rollins would turn heel, which people were really wanting to happen. So, yeah, I'll get into that in a minute. Survivor Series 2019. This was the only Survivor Series, the first and the only, to do Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT. So that was a very cool concept they threw in there. They thought that Raw and SmackDown was getting kind of stale, so they threw NXT in there, and I think it turned out to be a pretty fun show. You have your 2 world title matches, which I thought it was kind of weird they didn't put the NXT title match here, Pete Dunne and Adam Cole, but they put your women's triple threat here. And then on the spine, you just have your Raw, NXT, and SmackDown logos. And again, they're all throughout this DVD, but it looks cool. I like the color scheme of it all. Rhea Ripley was the sole survivor of the Survivor Series traditional match for the women. And then I believe Roman Reigns would win for SmackDown, beating Keith Lee, but they were the final 2 in that match. But they have a nice shot of Rollins, Ciampa, and Reigns there. You had Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan for the Universal title. Definitely not their best match. They had a way better match at the Rumble 2020. But I thought they had a pretty decent feud. An okay match between Rey Mysterio and Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. You had some interference from Dominic Mysterio, which was cool at the time. Dominic was not a full-time competitor at this time, so it was kind of cool to see him get in the ring. You had AJ Styles, Roderick Strong, and Shinsuke Nakamura, your mid-card champions. And then your main event, Becky Lynch, Shayna Baszler, and Bayley. Not the best main event, by any means. And there is your disc artwork, red, yellow, and blue again. Finn Balor is your trading card. Not a bad Survivor Series. I think the ending kind of brought it down a bit, but not a bad show. Oh, and I never said, I think it was the night after Survivor Series, Rollins turned heel. So that's all I had about that. The last show of the year, TLC. You got Bray Wyatt and The Miz on the cover, top of the cover. You got your ladder dividing Corbin and Reigns, who had a very long feud and very dull, very bad, boring, whatever. You got Asuka and Kairi Sane versus Becky Lynch and Charlotte in the main event for the SmackDown Women's titles. Wow, I always say SmackDown themselves, just the WWE Women's Championship. You had Bobby Lashley and Rusev. It might have been a tables match or just an Extreme Rules. I don't know. Something like that. I think it was tables, though. Yeah, that whole love triangle thing going on. Aleister Black and Murphy in a match here. I think he was still Buddy Murphy here. The Miz versus Bray Wyatt. Not for the title, though. It's kind of weird. You had Kofi Kingston and Big E from the New Day versus the Revival for the SmackDown Tag Titles. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. You had Corbin beating Reigns. I think he's the last guy to beat Roman Reigns before this big reign of Roman. So, yeah, there you go. King Corbin beat Roman Reigns at TLC 2019. And like I said, the main event was Becky and Charlotte versus the Kabuki Warriors. So, yeah. And Asuka's your trading card. There you go. I have not watched much of the show, I'm going to be honest. I watched Bray Wyatt and The Miz Daniel Bryan returned with a shaved head. It's about all I remember. But, you know, there it is, TLC 2019. There you guys have it, 2019 WWE Pay-Per-View Collection. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next one.